Hi there, I'm Emma Davies and my role is Technical Field Support for Ulrick & Short, a leading functional clean label ingredient supplier specialising in starches, flours, fibres and proteins. We've chosen to speak to you today about HFSS. Due to fully come into effect in 2023 and now pushed back to 2025, this is still a topic which needs to be addressed. Particularly with the upcoming election this year and the potential change in political party, this could drive HFSS forward within the UK market, especially when Labour on record have said that they approve of the regulation. This will by far be the biggest regulatory change in food industry for a very long time. An impact will be felt across many different sectors, one of the big ones being bakery. During this short presentation, I'll speak you through the timeline of legislations within the food and beverage industry, which have impacted on the formation of the HFSS regulations, followed by more in-depth information on HFSS, including a definition, how to calculate the scores, some working examples, and the solutions that are available to help you in your developments for either HFSS compliancy or more generally, healthy reformulation. There have been a number of different food and beverage legislations over the past couple of decades, which highlight some levels of repetition, but also points from previous legislations and regulations, which then appear in new and upcoming ones. But the one which was the basis for the new impending HFSS regulations was the nutrient profiling model in 2004. This was developed to classify and rank foods according to their nutritional composition for reasons relating to promoting good health and also preventing disease. Next to come into force was the traffic light labelling system, which uses colours including red, amber and green to illustrate whether a food has high, medium or low amount of fat, saturates, salt and sugar, along with calories per portion size. The salt reduction targets also started, aiming to reduce the level of salt in 76 different food categories, since these particular categories provided 54% of dietary salt to consumers. In 2015, the Scientific Advisory Committee on Nutrition published a Carbohydrates and Health report, proposing that free sugars should not account for more than 5% of daily energy intake. Then in 2016, we had the launch of the Eat Well plate, highlighting the different types of food that make up our diet and the proportions that we should be consuming them in to maintain a well-balanced diet. Also in this year, the Childhood Obesity Plan came into effect, with the government pushing to significantly reduce the rate of childhood obesity by supporting healthier choices. In 2017, the sugar reduction targets came in, and this was based on reducing the level of sugar in the foods that contribute the most to the intakes of children up to the age of 18 years. And the aim was to reduce this by 20% by the year 2020. From here, the momentum started to increase further, and there was the introduction of the soft drinks levy in 2018, which targets producers of soft drinks to remove added sugar, promote sugar-free alternative beverages, and also reduce overall portion size. Drinks which contain more than 5 grams of sugar per 100 ml was then also subjected to increased prices based on tax additions. There was then the calorie reduction targets, which challenged the food industry to reduce calories in products consumed by families by 20%. 2020 was the year that the National Food Strategy was published, and this is looking at the entire food chain from field to fork. Similar to 2014, salt reduction targets came back into play and new targets were set for 2024. Obesity is still high on the agenda, and in order to reduce levels, the Better Health campaign is launched. And this is based on offering free support and guidance to those who are looking towards achieving a healthier weight. And this is launched on the back of the COVID pandemic. In 2022, out-of-home labelling came into effect, which made calorie labelling mandatory for food and drinks served from the out of home. And then the introduction of the government food strategy, a strategy which is prioritising healthier, sustainable and affordable foods for all. Then between 2023 and 2025, the HFSS regulations came into and will potentially continue to come into effect. HFSS refers to food and drinks which are high in saturated fat, sodium, sugar, and energy, and this is in accordance to the Department of Health's nutrient profiling model. As we've seen through the regulation and legislation timeline, most of them are looking at tackling one element or another, for example, salt reduction, calorie reduction, and so on. But the introduction of the HFSS regulations can be seen as more of a holistic approach, as it targets all the negative categories which are contributing to poor health, as opposed to just one. It also encourages the use of healthier elements, including fruit, veg, fibre, nuts, and proteins. So HFSS compliance is a huge challenge for the food industry and one we should be excited to tackle. The ban on product placement, price promotions, and advertising is a great opportunity to encourage reformulation of products and to drive businesses into selling healthier alternatives which will contribute to a healthier growing population. In this next upcoming section, I'll speak you through the HFSS definition, the sectors which are impacted, how to calculate its scores, and then we'll work through a HFSS working score example. So as we're now aware, HFSS stands for products which are high in saturated fats, sodium, sugar, and energy. In terms of the actual scoring system, this is based on the nutrient profiling model, and these are calculated on the basis of 100 grams of product. If a food scores 4 or above on the scoring system, then it will not be considered as HFSS and will therefore be subjected to the regulation restrictions. However, if a food product scores below 4, then this will be considered HFSS compliant and can be advertised and promoted in terms of placement and price. This is also similar for beverages. So if a beverage scores 1 or above, then it's not HFSS compliant. However, if it scores below 1, then it is deemed HFSS compliant. So only some of the HFSS regulations have come into effect, including the ban on promotion by location. HFSS products were removed from gondola ends, the checkouts, and near the front of stores in order to help crack down on the level of consumption. And we have to agree, these areas do tend to influence consumer purchases. And this part of the regulation came into force in October 2022. The ban on price promotion for volume sales was due to come into effect in October 23, but this has been pushed back to October 25 to help with the cost of living crisis. However, this is looking at price promotions such as buy one, get one free. And let's be honest, we're all susceptible to these offers because they're so effective at influencing food preferences and purchases. Equally, the ban on advertising HFSS foods online and on TV before 9 p.m. has also been pushed back to January 25 from January 23. So we can break the sectors which are impacted by the regulations into 3 areas. So the first one being beverages, and this includes soft drinks, juices, and milk drinks. So as we mentioned earlier, these must score 1 or lower in order to be deemed non-HFSS or HFSS compliant. We then have the sweet category, which is probably the largest area which is going to be impacted by HFSS regulations. And this covers a broad number of areas from sweet biscuits to muffins, cakes, all the way through to your morning goods. This also spans out into puddings and desserts, along with also posing a challenge for the breakfast industry in terms of cereals and yogurts. Finally, we have the savoury sector, including ready meals like pizza, crisps, and also potato-containing products. So this will ultimately have an impact on the snacking category overall. All 3 of these categories combined add up to comprising approximately 27% of retail shelf space. So this is one of the biggest legislative changes we've seen for a while. This is therefore a big challenge in which food industry will need to overcome sooner rather than later. So in terms of the scoring system and how to work out HFSS, it can be relatively complicated, but what I'll do now is I'll go over this in a bit more detail. So within the HFSS scoring system, you have both A points and C points. The A points are the categories which have negative impacts on health. So these include the energy, the saturated fat, the sugar, and the sodium. and these have scores ranging from 0 to 10. You then have C points, which are categories which are deemed to have positive contributions to the diet and include fruit, veg, nuts, fiber, and protein. So if a food product scores less than 11 A points, then you're able to use your C points and subtract this away. If your food product scores 11 or more A points and less than 5 points for fruit, veg, and nuts, then you're not allowed to take away the protein C points. So in summary, you're only allowed to take away protein points if your A points are below 11 or fruit, veg, and nuts is 5. This may sound a little overwhelming or a little bit confusing to people that are looking at HFSS for the first time, but Ulrick and Short have a free online calculator tool, which is really easy to use and basically works out your HFSS score for you. So you just input your categories, your nutritional scores in, and it will just send it through to you. So it's really easy to use. And this can be found on our website. Or equally at the end of the presentation, there'll also be a QR code which you can scan and that will link you through as well. So I'll now talk you through how we worked out the score for a non-HFSS lemon muffin. And then later on in the session, we'll compare this score to a HFSS compliant equivalent. So on the screen now, you should be able to see 4 categories at the top. So we have energy, saturated fat, total sugar, and sodium. And then down the left-hand side, we have the point scoring system. So like we mentioned earlier, this scores from 0 through to 10. So if we have a look, our lemon muffin, which has 4 sugar and 4 fat, has around 1,500 kilojoules of energy, and that gives us a score of 4. And this is because it's more than 1,005, but it's less than 1,675. Then moving on to saturated fat, we're just below the score of 3, which gives us a score of 2 overall. Total sugar gives us a score of 5, and sodium a score of 4. So our total A points here equate to 15. And moving on to our C points, so our fruit, veg, and nuts are 0%. No surprise given that this is a baked good, and particularly a muffin in this case. So that gives us a score of 0. We then have some fiber and protein within the nutritions as well, which gives us a score of 1 and 3. And we can assume at this point that the fiber and the protein within this particular recipe has come from the flour component. And this gives us a total C points of 1. Now, you're probably thinking, how does this work? Because we've scored 1 for fiber and we've scored 3 for protein. So surely we have a score of 4 for C points. But remember what we mentioned earlier. If your A points are above 11, then you're unable to take away your C points. So in this particular example, we're only allowed to subtract our fiber. So our total A points have equaled 15, our total C points are 1, and our overall HFSS score is 14. So in this case, we can conclude that this product is not HFSS compliant as it is scored above 4. So now we've looked at exactly how the HFSS and the nutrient profiling model mechanism works, but what are the practical ways in which you can reformulate to achieve compliance? Let's look at 4 key areas. Firstly, sugar. So sugar plays a pivotal role in bakery, whether this be taste, structure, browning. So therefore, replacing sugar requires a nuanced approach depending on the specific application and production methods. Additionally, as sweet bakery is largely comprised of indulgent products, consumer expectation is high and any solution can't impact on overall product quality. So how do we reduce the level of sugar in sufficient quantities while still producing a great product that consumers will want to buy? The first thing to say is that simply replacing sugar with a sweetener won't work. We must first understand exactly what sugar is doing in the specific application, and then only then can we directly mimic the functionality of sugar in terms of volume, texture, mouthfeel, but also colour and crumb structure. One option for sugar replacers is the functional clean label Avante range, which allows for up to 30% sugar reduction across multiple categories within the sweet bakery segment. It allows for this in a sponge, for example, by having a high gelatinization temperature allowing for rise, and a level of protein which contributes to the Maillard reaction for browning. Applications include sponges, frostings, fillings, cookies, biscuits, and many, many more. Next up, we have fat reduction. So using fats in baking is a long-established practice, and the introduction of fats and oils does not only improve product handling, but also improves the texture and mouthfeel of baked products. One option for fat replacement is the functional clean label delight range, which allows for up to 20 to 30% fat reduction, and this can have a significant impact on traffic light labelling as well as HFSS compliancy. If you think of fat, which contains 9 calories per gram, compared against starch, which is a carbohydrate based at 4 calories per gram, you're already eliminating 5 calories per gram of fat removed. However, this can end up being even lower, since we recommend using our ingredients in combination with water to achieve the desired impact. Additionally, the delight range can be used for a range of added indulgence. So majority of the products are based on tapioca. So if you have a look at tapioca under the microscope, you'll see that the granule is very spherical in shape. And it's this characteristic which lends itself so well to being a fat mimetic. Now moving on to improving our C points, our first focus is protein. So protein has many functionalities within food, including binding and emulsification. But also in combination with this, food products enriched with protein can increase the levels of satiety more, making us feel fuller for longer, which in turn decreases energy intake. Perhaps this is a way to tackle the obesity crisis. Additionally, many food developers use protein in order to achieve protein claims on the front of pack. This is calculated as 12% energy contribution coming from protein for a source of protein claim, and 20% energy contribution from protein for a high-end protein claim. So how do we manage to increase the level of protein within baked goods without impacting on the overall eat quality? One of the options for increasing levels of protein is by using the functional protein range referred to as complex. This comprehensive range of proteins come from a variety of base crops, including wheat, pea, rice, and fava bean. The complex range also encompasses some textured proteins, which can add a unique yet exciting dimension to bakery. The complex range has been used in numerous bakery applications, including breads, bagels, pancakes, muffins, protein bars, and cookies, to name a few. Finally, fibre is another element which can help contribute to C points in order to help achieve HFSS compliancy. We as consumers and members of the food industry understand the importance of fibre with its attraction to gut health in particular. Additionally, fibre can also help with increasing satiety, which can again help us make us feel fuller for longer. With this in mind, many food manufacturers also like to work towards a source of fibre claim, which is 3 grams per 100 grams of finished product, and a high fibre claim, which is 6 grams per 100 grams of finished product. An option for fibre addition is the range of insoluble fibres named within the cilia range. The crops within this section range from wheat, oat, and bamboo. The cilia range in particular can help with textural control by opening up structures, providing structural support, but also helping with improved moisture retention by binding fat and water, all of which can help improve product quality. So now we will have a look at the scoring system for the HFSS compliant muffins, which have been carefully developed at Ulrick and Shaw in order to keep the characteristics which consumers have come to love. But first, I'll speak you through the solutions that we've used in order to achieve this. So first up, you can see on the screen that we have Avanti 87. So Avanti 87 is declared as a fortified wheat flour and has been used in this particular recipe to reduce the sugar by up to 30%. Its usage we recommend for every kilo of sugar removed, replaced with 1 kilo of Avanti 87. We then have Delight 5, which is declared as a tapioca starch, which has enabled us to make a fat reduction between 30 to 50% within the recipe. For the usage of Delight 5, we recommend for every 1 kilo of fat removed from the recipe that you replace 40% of this with Delight 5 and 60% with water. The Delight 5 can be pre-blended with any other dry ingredients, and the water added in with any other wets, such as your eggs, for example. We then have Complex 18, which is declared as a wheat protein, and it has a protein content of 80%. So this helps with nutritional enhancement, but also by providing structure and structural stability. And then finally, we have Cilia WF90, which is one of our wheat fibers. And this helps to give a level of fortification again, help with HFSS compliancy, but also to open up the structure and also give that moisture retention over the duration of shelf life. So now we'll go over the scoring system again. So similar to before, we have the energy, the fat, the sugar, and the sodium at the top for the new muffin. And then we have the scoring system from 0 to 10. So we've managed to reduce the calories from 1,500 to 1,198, which gives us a score of 3. Saturated fat, we've managed to achieve 1 gram per 100 grams of product, giving us an actual score of 0, which is fantastic. We then have total sugars at 18, giving us a score of 3. And finally, we have sodium with a score of 1. This gives us a total A points of 7. And moving on to C points, we have 0% again of fruit, veg, and nuts, which gives us an overall score of 0. But we've also managed to increase our fiber with the use of the Cilia WF90 to give us the maximum points possible for this category. And then we've slightly increased the protein a little bit more. So we've managed to achieve a score of 3 here. This gives us overall C points of 8. So our total A points are 7. And because of this and being below 11, this time we are able to subtract our protein. So we're allowed to subtract our fiber and our protein, which gives us our 8. And that gives us a final HFSS score of -1. So because this product scores below 4, this product is deemed HFSS compliant. That's all from me. Please find on the screen a QR code, which links you through to my contact details, recipe sheets, and the link to the online free HFSS calculator tool. I'm now open to answer any questions. Thanks once again.
Thank you very much, Emma, for presenting here at Bakery Live. It was certainly a very interesting presentation. What made you want to talk about this with us today?
So I spoke about HFSS in particular because it's a topic which could be enforced relatively soon. If there's to be a change to government, some of our customers are looking into it and others are almost waiting for it to be enforced and finalised before working on it. So hopefully by speaking through it, it's given a level of understanding about what it is, how it works, how to calculate scores, and where you can go to get the support you need. So I hope this helps people to feel equipped with the knowledge and understanding to start or to continue their ongoing work with HFSS.
That's great. And on this note about understanding, from your experience, how informed are your customers about reformulating to meet HFSS requirements?
Okay, so a number of our customers are aware of the potential upcoming HFSS regulations and what that may mean for them. We've been going out to our customers and inviting them on site to have training days which are based on healthy reformulation. And this encompasses the HFSS information. So a lot of the time they're aware of it, but they don't have a deeper understanding of what it is and how to calculate the scores. And obviously by going through the presentation earlier, there is quite a lot behind how to calculate the scores. So by doing these training days that we offer, we're able to increase that level of understanding, but also get customers ready for what may be about to come.
And you sort of showed it in your presentation by providing 2 examples of bakery products, so one that was not HFSS compliant and one that was. What would you say are the technical challenges behind reformulating baked goods so they're lower in fat, sugar, and sodium?
So there are certainly a lot of technical challenges, that's for sure, in terms of developing HFSS compliant products. In terms of like the lemon muffin example that we went through, I was the one that developed this, and it was particularly hard to ensure that it still had the visuals and the organoleptics of a muffin, which consumers expect. So when you're removing high levels of sugar and fat, for example, this can have detrimental effects on the finished product. So understanding these components in more detail, and how a recipe works with that fat and that sugar, was relatively challenging, because you're looking at multiple reductions and additions, including like fiber and protein, as opposed to just sugar reduction or fat reduction on its own. So that's kind of the main one, to make sure that the products are still acceptable to consumers. But challenges also include price. Consumers don't want to pay a premium for such products. So being conscious about this was also a challenge during healthy reformulation developments.
So there are a number of different angles and aspects that you had to look at from. So as we've seen, from your session here today, creating healthy bakery products requires a lot of careful consideration and trial and error. In your opinion, who should be driving this? Do you think it should be on the government? Do you think it should be on the manufacturers? Or would you say it's more of a collaborative effort?
Personally, I would say it's more of a collaborative effort. The food industry is constantly changing. There's always new drivers which come into force. So without that clear guidance and support coming from the government, at the moment, the pressure is not there for food manufacturers to be working on it. But once it's enforced, then food manufacturers will then know that they need to address reformulating their products.
Thank you so much, Emma, for taking the time to speak with me and on talking about such an important topic. I certainly hope it provided some clarity for those watching today. So we really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you for having me.